This is the broken vault, uncovering the truths they never wanted you to hear. Have you ever stopped and wondered if maybe there's more to the story we get told, about common health issues?
It's a common thought, that feeling that something doesn't quite add up.
Right. And sometimes that leads you to some, well, unexpected places.
Hmm.
Today we're looking into a document. It's titled The Diabetes Cover-Up, A Hidden Cure.
A very provocative title.
Extremely. And it makes some very bold claims. It even says it contains excerpts from the Broken Vault itself, suggesting this is where these hidden truths were supposedly first aired.
Interesting.
Our task today for you is really to unpack the core arguments in this document.
Yeah.
It raises some fundamental questions about type 2 diabetes.
Big questions.
Like, what if type 2 diabetes wasn't actually meant to be this lifelong sentence? What if, as the document asks, a cure has been around for decades, quietly, cheaply?
And it doesn't stop there.
No, it points fingers. It talks about a pharmaceutical mafia supposedly burying this truth. Now, just to be crystal clear up front, we're exploring what this document claims.
Exactly. We're dissecting the arguments it presents, how it builds its case.
We're not here to validate or debunk, but to understand the claims themselves.
Right. The goal is for you to grasp the perspective offered in this material, to see how it constructs this narrative of a simple, suppressed truth about diabetes. It's a fascinating construction, challenging a lot of standard thinking.
Okay, so let's get into the first major pillar of their argument. They call it the billion-dollar lie.
What strong opening.
The document states, pretty bluntly, Big Pharma makes over $150 billion a year from diabetes treatments, not cures.
That distinction is key to their whole argument. Treatments versus cures.
Definitely. And it names specific common medications. You've got metformin, which helps the body use insulin better.
Often the first drug prescribed.
All right. Then insulin itself, obviously. And newer ones like Ozempic, which helps release insulin and slows digestion.
Things many people with type 2 diabetes are familiar with.
Exactly. But the source insists none of these are actually designed to reverse the condition.
Only manage it.
Manage it for life is the phrase they use. It paints this picture of, ongoing symptom control, not resolution.
And they tie that directly to the economics. The document argues, a patient cured is a customer lost.
That's the core financial argument.
Yes, it frames the entire approach as a kind of subscription model. You subscribe to lifelong management, not a one-time fix.
Which, according to them, serves the industry's bottom line.
Precisely. The source implies the financial incentive is structured to maintain the condition, or at least manage its symptoms indefinitely, because a cheap, permanent cure would disrupt that massive revenue stream.
It forces you to consider, how profit motives might shape treatment strategies, at least according to this document's logic.
A challenging thought.
Then the document shifts gears to what it calls hidden science they silenced. This is where it gets really specific.
The evidence part of their claim.
It talks about studies. Multiple studies, apparently, from Japan, Canada, India, all supposedly showing type 2 diabetes reversal is possible.
How? What methods did these studies allegedly use?
Things like targeted diets, specific types of fasting, and something they term blood sugar retraining.
Okay.
It even highlights a UK study from 2012, claimed it reversed diabetes in, I think, 11 patients, using basically just very low calories and gut rest.
Gut rest meaning periods of fasting to reset the system.
That seems to be the implication, yeah. Letting the digestive system reset to maybe improve metabolism. And then there's a mention of an Indian clinic in 2016.
What about that one?
Supposedly achieved reversal in 70% of its diabetic cases using diet alone.
70% is a high number.
It is. And after listing these, the document just asks, but where are those headlines?
Implying they should be front-page news, but aren't.
Exactly. Suggesting these findings are being ignored or suppressed.
And the document gives a reason for that supposed suppression.
It does. It claims these findings are buried and discredited. Why? Because they don't fit the business model.
So it's portraying a deliberate marginalization of research that threatens the status quo.
Right. Information suppression. The idea that discoveries challenging the profitable treatment model just get sidelined, overlooked, maybe even actively dismissed.
Almost like a conspiracy of silence, fueled by financial interests. Not necessarily overt, but systemic. Lack of funding for follow-ups, maybe. Minimal media attention.
That seems to be the argument. That the system itself, perhaps unintentionally or perhaps not, ensures these alternative findings stay hidden from the mainstream. It really questions how science and health news get disseminated.
It definitely presents a counter-narrative to the idea of purely objective scientific progress.
Building on that, the document then makes this point. Food is medicine, but that's a threat.
Okay, connecting diet back to the suppression idea.
Yes. The argument is, if people really grasped how central diet is, both in causing and potentially reversing type 2 diabetes, the whole pharmaceutical approach would basically crumble.
A direct challenge to the medication-centric model.
It points to specific culprits in the diet. Refined carbs, processed foods, seed oils, and sugar addiction. Things, it says, fuel the disease.
Common dietary concerns.
And on the flip side, it suggests natural solutions. Things like fenugreek, bitter melon, cinnamon, alongside just eating low-carb, whole foods. It claims these can help reset insulin sensitivity.
The body's ability to handle sugar properly.
Right. And help reverse the condition. But the source sees this potential power of food as a direct threat to the existing industry.
And how does it say that threat is managed?
Well, it contrasts this potential with what we actually see. The document says instead of useful dietary info, we get ads for insulin pens, TikToks promoting Ozempic.
The pharmaceutical solutions are heavily marketed.
Exactly, and these endless promises that a cure is coming from them. The source frames this as a deliberate diversion tactic.
Steering people towards profitable drugs away from cheaper, potentially effective dietary changes.
Yeah, it argues the public is kind of intentionally kept focused on pharma, while simple food-based approaches get ignored or downplayed. Maintaining dependency, basically.
So it's suggesting the economic structure itself promotes reliance on medication over self-empowerment through nutrition.
That's the core assertion. Then it moves to what it calls the chilling part.
Which is?
The role of doctors and their training. The document states, very directly, most doctors get less than 20 hours of nutrition training in their entire medical education.
Less than 20 hours? That's not a lot, considering the impact of diet on health.
Not at all. And according to the source, this leads to a specific outcome. Doctors are taught to prescribe, not to heal. To adjust your dosage, not your diet.
That's a very strong claim about medical education.
It is. It paints this picture of medical professionals being guided, perhaps by the limitations of their training, towards managing symptoms with drugs.
Rather than addressing root causes like diet.
Precisely.
And connecting that systemically, the document isn't necessarily blaming individual doctors, is it?
No, it seems careful about that. It suggests it's more about the system they're trained and operate within. A system designed, maybe implicitly, to perpetuate this medication-focused model of care.
Because that model aligns with the financial interests previously discussed.
That seems to be the connection the document makes. That the educational framework itself produces practitioners who are more comfortable, more trained in pharmacological solutions.
Which fits neatly into that subscription model of lifelong treatment they talked about earlier.
It all ties together in their narrative.
It certainly raises questions about how medical training priorities might influence overall healthcare approaches, especially for lifestyle-related conditions.
So after laying all this out, the profit motive, the alleged suppressed science, the role of food, the medical training, the document asks its big question. So why is this truth hidden?
And what's its answer? The grand conclusion.
It pulls it all together into this picture of, well, a massive potential disruption if the truth came out. It claims that if people knew type 2 diabetes could be reversed naturally, affordably, the consequences would be huge. Multiple industries. It says insurance companies would lose billions. Fewer people needing lifelong management means less payout.
Okay.
It also claims big food and big pharma would collapse together, suggesting they're kind of interdependent. One provides the problem, the other the solution.
A symbiotic relationship as they see it.
Yes. And maybe the most dramatic claim. Millions would walk away from the system that profits off their pain.
Wow. So it's portraying a potential systemic collapse triggered by this hidden truth.
That's the vision it presents. That the current structure is so deeply invested in managing chronic disease that a real, accessible cure would basically destabilize major parts of the economy and healthcare system.
It's a very conspiratorial viewpoint, framing widespread systems as actively working against public health for profit.
Extremely. And it concludes with a really stark warning.
Let's hear it.
It says, this isn't just a cover-up. It's a quiet war against your health. And most people have no idea they're the casualty.
A quiet war. That definitely frames it as an ongoing hidden conflict with individuals caught in the middle.
Right. It really makes you ask, what does it mean if the systems we rely on, healthcare, food, insurance, are presented, as this source does, as potentially having interests that conflict with our own well-being.
It's designed to erode trust, clearly, to make the listener question the motives behind the information and treatments they receive, to see their health not just as a personal matter, but as a battleground in a larger economic conflict.
So after hearing all this, digesting these claims from the diabetes cover-up, a hidden cure, what does it all mean for you listening right now?
It's a lot to take in.
It is. This exploration has laid out a very compelling, though obviously very controversial, narrative. It pushes us really to look deeper than the surface messages we get about health.
You to question motivations.
Yeah. To question the why behind the information. To consider if simpler, less profitable paths to health might be, as this document claims, deliberately obscured.
So the takeaway isn't necessarily to accept the document's claims wholesale.
Not at all. But maybe the next time you see a health ad or read an article, just pause. Ask yourself, is this information truly meant to empower me with choices? All the choices. Or is it guiding me, subtly or not, towards one particular system, one particular solution?
That's a valuable exercise, and maybe the real exploration isn't just examining specific claims like these, but looking at the bigger picture, those underlying forces, the economic ones, the political ones, that influence what information surfaces and what stays buried.
What gets amplified and what remains quiet.
Exactly. How often do we really stop and question the profit models behind the solutions we're offered most insistently? This document, whatever its own merits, certainly pushes that button.
Yeah, it leaves you wondering.
It does. Wondering if the most effective answers are sometimes the least promoted simply because they aren't the most lucrative. Maybe being truly informed means you have to be willing to dig, to look for truths that aren't always served up conveniently.
You've been inside the broken vault. Stay curious, stay alert, and remember the real threats are always hidden.